Welcome to Learning with Leaders. And today I have a very special guest. Her name is Ngozi, and she is a very influential and experienced female learning leader in Africa, operating out of Nigeria. And she will be talking in today's conversation about what she learned when she really failed hard in the beginning of her career, and also when she realized at some point that she didn't get the promotion she wanted to have, and what she learned from that. And also her top tip for young professionals is think ahead, easier said than done. Enjoy today's Learning with Leaders. Bye-bye.
Hello, Ngozi. Welcome to Learning with Leaders.
Thank you, Paco. How are you? Excited to be here.
Excellent. Thank you. I'm very fine. I hope you're good too.
Yes, very well. Thank you.
Excellent. I see that you wear something traditionally African.
Sort of a mix of, yeah. So there's a bit of the Ankara fabric, but with tulle, I think. This is, yeah. So it's a mix of fabrics.
Very beautiful.
Yeah.
So let's then start. And I, of course, would like to very quickly introduce you to
Sure.
the audience. I think that you are one of the, let's say, HR leaders and professionals in Africa, very focused on bringing forward coaching, leadership, training and learning in not only in Nigeria, but in all of Africa. And that you're engaged in several HR communities around Africa since quite some years. Is that correct, Ngozi?
Yes, Paco. Yeah, humbly. Yes, but true.
Okay, excellent. So let me start with the first, let's say, warm-up question. So talking about, one of the last conferences you attended, I think it was called Made in Africa Leadership Conference. I noticed when going through some of the documents, and you see some people even read those documents, that
Yeah, good to know.
Making Africa Work for Africans had
Mhm.
set up a paper with 6 primary assumptions. And one of these assumptions caught my attention. It was called like African leaders are willing to learn from peers in similar positions in other countries.
Mhm.
So thinking of that and thinking of our primary target audience, the young professionals, why do you think young professionals from Africa should go outside and not learn within the African community, but also learn from other countries?
Thank you so much, Paco. That's a good question. Honestly, I believe that it should be both internal and external. So learn from within Africa, but also from outside of Africa. The world is a global village now, as we say, right? So again, from an exposure point of view, it's absolutely helpful because more and more leaders are going to become global leaders. I mean, you will see leaders who are in Africa, move to Asia, live and work and lead teams there, and vice versa. Across the world, Europe moving to Africa, Africa moving, to in North America. So already it's helpful right from the start that young professionals are exposed. So I would say that it's helpful to, of course, we go to school with peers and you're learning and and growing and leading even in that space. But then you're able to also bring about a diversity that is helpful, not only from an emotional intelligence point of view, but also just for wisdom in the room, as I will put it. Just the knowledge of understanding, the dynamics that happen and how to lead and greet and the basics. So yes, super important as African leaders grow, especially young professionals. If they do have the opportunity to network with peers outside of their space, I think COVID has come and helped us also realize that we don't always have to physically be at locations. I've even heard of tours now. People can sort of have virtual tours. I know it's not as the same as being physically present, but to the point that when you have the opportunity to be exposed, it's helpful because you're learning, and then you're looking at yourself as a global citizen where you are hopefully going to lead teams, multicultural teams across locations and ethnicities, and it's helpful to have exposure.
Yeah, I fully agree, Ngozi. So when I look back to my personal career, I remember, some excellent coaching, intentional and unintentional coaching, and quite some less good. I will spare you the details here. So I'm really interested in getting to know, or if you could share one or two of your personal most memorable coaching situations, and what did you learn from it?
So interestingly, I believe that when questions like this are asked, most the ones that typically pop up in your head are the ones that maybe you struggle with. Because I mean that happened with me. So just hearing you and just the one that popped in my head was one that I really struggled with. But interestingly, I believe I learned a lot from. And again, from the concept of sometimes the challenges we go through. I think there's the Japanese phrase called kintetsukorai. So the core of the core of your brokenness. Enables you know that you have more value. So I think there's a ceramic kind of process that goes through when ceramic breaks and they use gold to sort of like patch it back together. It becomes of more value than what it typically is. So what comes to mind for me really is one that I struggle with. So I think it was 15 years ago, but I remember so vividly because now I remember that it was very uncomfortable. I was very unhappy about the conversation. But this leader was trying to encourage me to be more open in terms of the challenge that I had gone through. Right? Again, it was something related to a promotion, and it just that didn't happen, and I thought should have happened. And it was more around, well, take a step back, go back to the most. He asked me to write a list of people who I thought were the most difficult people I was working with at the time, and I didn't know where he was going. I was like, yeah, and I wrote A, B, C, and then and then he goes ahead and says, great. So now I want you to go to them and ask them for feedback. I'm like, what? But looking back now, it just was really good because then it helps. First, it breaks all of the whatever it is that, again, I don't know that it was pride, but it was just enables you to become more self-aware because you're going to people who you don't naturally gravitate towards, and maybe their leadership style or your leadership style is not the same. But I believe that it also helped a certain level of experience a certain level of vulnerability because I'm like, this leader, I'm not such a big fan, but I have to go and say, tell me, give me feedback, and I have to circle back to you on how I'm working on it. And just looking back now, I believe that was one of the most impactful, at least came to mind. And interestingly, I would say to young professionals who are listening today that a lot of times also when 10 years on, 15 years on, someone's going to ask you a question. It may not be the really great coaching experiences you've had, like, oh my God, you're fantastic, you were great at this job. And that's good, right? Because again, it feeds who you are, it enables you to give more. But your growth, right? And this Kintisakurai phrase that you become of more value because of the challenge, right? Really comes to mind. So whenever you're challenged or you experience difficulty and you're in your career, and sometimes you don't even want to be in the room, right, with the individual, you're just like, hurry up, be done, I'm gone, remember, because it's those experiences, if you follow through with them and have those difficult conversations, you learn a lot more about yourself. You become more self-aware. And for me, in that instance, be able to, now I can have those difficult conversations, but it wasn't easy at the start.
Yeah, I think especially for younger people, when you are so eager to perform, to be perfect, to be professional, then you don't want to be confronted, with conversations which are really challenging from a personal standpoint. I love that example, Ngozi. I can relate back to my own experience as well
I
from what
can
you just
imagine.
mentioned.
Absolutely. Thank you, Paco.
Excellent. So let me ask you another question, which
Sure.
is somehow also related to COVID, but not only. I noticed that also pre-COVID, because of the increasing number of virtual meetings,
Yeah.
the agendas were very tight. There were 5 bullet points, almost no opportunity for new ideas, for spontaneity. So my question is there any practical advice from you, probably not only for young professionals, but what if I am part of a meeting, I probably don't have so many things to contribute to the specific bullet points, but of course, how it works in meetings, you're thinking of a good idea, you want to place it, you want to voice up. I mean,
Yeah.
how can you do that? Do you have a tool or tips how to do that?
Well, I don't know that I have tips, but over the years, don't I say, I don't know that I have tools, but I do have tips, right? Over the
Hmm.
years that have maybe been helpful. I mean, initially you're sitting in a room and first you're asking yourself, again, depending on the scenario, sometimes it's the, my God, I'm in the room, super exciting. Like, look at all these senior people, and you're listening and wanting to just sort of mop up all the knowledge and information. And then, as you grow, depending on the level you are in your career, you're like, I need to contribute to this. This makes sense. And I have an idea about that, right? But sometimes you struggle and that thought is in your head until the meeting ends. And you're like, I should have said something, right? And then, but looking back, right? Just connecting the dots looking back. The first is to articulate yourself. And I think it's helpful to write. I'm a writer. I don't know if everyone, when I say writer, like I scribble a lot, like in meetings, you just want to write and articulate your thoughts. So if you do want to say something, first you're going to tell yourself, I have a voice and my voice, my ideas count. And that way you're validating your inner voice so that when you open your mouth, there's something comes out of it. The second is when, when you do want to say something, you want to be sure that there's something right comes out of it, right? So you've articulated it. So you've written down the thoughts, like, exactly what you want to say, so that once you open your mouth, you can say that. Sometimes you need to, not necessarily permission to, but you need to just take the bull by the horn, because sometimes you're like, hi, I have something to say, versus asking for, is it okay to say something? I know sometimes maybe that's easier, but sometimes it's easier to just raise your hand. Once you raise your hand, someone will call your attention and say, hey, I think someone's hand is raised. Even in virtual world now, you can just raise the hand, right? And then someone's like, oh, I see a hand is raised. Yes, and they
Hmm.
pull you into the conversation and you articulate the points. It's helpful to also keep it really short and sweet, just really nice and simple. And so you're not going sort of very long-winded response or clarification to what you're trying to say. So I think those are really helpful to help yourself, the inner voice, to tell yourself, I have a voice and I have an idea and I can share it. To articulate that before you say, and to just go for it. Raise your hand and say, look, I have something to say, and just and go with it. Because a lot of times you will beat yourself up more,
Hmm.
especially when what you wanted to say then gets said. You're like, oh, I really wanted to say that, and
Hmm.
then all of a sudden you sometimes even miss an opportunity to be part of a team or lead a team because of the idea. So do not be afraid. I think the biggest piece is just not to be afraid. Tell yourself you have a voice and then say it.
I like it. It's a very practical tip. Very, I mean, it happened to me as well. You had an idea, you forget to write it down, and
Yeah.
then, yeah, 5 minutes later, it's gone, right?
Yeah,
Thank
absolutely.
you.
So
Ngozi, I have now a surprise question for you, which just, came spontaneously on my mind,
okay.
but it will be an easy one for you. I mean, we are all working, in the training and learning world, and we had to switch a lot from a face-to-face classroom into virtual delivery modes.
Yes.
You are working also with business simulations, from what I know.
Yeah.
You're leading them yourself. So my question goes as follows. What is your biggest discovery, and hopefully a positive discovery, when switching from classroom to virtual? What has positively surprised you when switching that modality?
Hmm. I think initially we all just went with fear, and I'll speak to myself, my team, just that whole, oh my God, like how do we replicate this? The experience in the room, seeing people. So what has pleasantly surprised me, because there've been sessions I've run, with our clients, and then sometimes I've run with maybe not our clients, but partnering with an organization or another firm, and just a stark difference for me. What I found is, for us, we absolutely make coming on video is mandatory, right? For the most part.
Mm,
I mean, we ask you, please come up on video. Now, again, if there are bandwidth problems, of course, understandable, but it's mandatory for the videos to be on. I find that when videos are on, you're going to get more participation and engagement in the room because people are more present, and then you can transfer more learning. And, the altogether end of the experience is good for both the trainers and the participants. So that was, again, it sounds like a no-brainer, but then when you flip it and go into sessions where no one is on video, or very few people are on
mm,
video, you're going to struggle with just the attention, and even the energy for you that you bring into the room
exactly.
will be challenging. But COVID has also helped us to realize that we can do a lot even in virtually, like breakout rooms, sending information ahead. We've run a session one time, a meetup, where you sort of send packs to people, and then they receive it ahead of the program, and then they engage. So as much as possible, making it sort of a community. So I would say that for me, the biggest is ensure people are fully present and have their videos on, because then they will connect, and all of what you hopefully want to achieve will be achieved from a learning perspective.
I fully agree. And by the way, I also see companies organize trainings, virtual trainings, where participants are coming from so many different geographies,
Yes.
which would have never had the opportunity to come together in a classroom training.
Absolutely.
So I think that is very positive.
Yes, that's super helpful. Cut out the travel. I mean, again, there's the downsides to some of that, but generally on the upside, you get more people in the room, and people from, like, say, different geographies, different backgrounds, and really enriches the programs.
Yeah, I agree. I could go on forever, Ngozi, but here is my last question.
Okay.
Ngozi, I mean, we all know, at least, from what we have heard, the top 10 future skills for 2025 from the World Economic Forum. I will not relate to those, but what would be, let's say, your top tip for a young professional to be successful? Where should they put their focus on when you had to give them one or two top tips for the future?
Top tips. I think for me, the first is to think ahead. Always think ahead. And I know, again, in this world, there's we literally in social media, the younger professionals are digital natives versus some of us who are digital immigrants. But at the end of the day, the first piece is really thinking ahead. If you can pause and be quiet, because there's so much noise. There's so much noise. Like, your phone is buzzing, your work, everything is trying to pull your attention. Just be able to quieten down and think ahead is super helpful, because when you pause, you can process what you want to do. And then the second is really being solution focused. Even as you think ahead, is how do I solve a problem? Whether you're an employee just starting off, graduate trainee, or you've done 5 years in a company, or again, you're this executive, how am I going to solve the problem for my clients, for my team, or my client organization? And once you can quieten down and think ahead, a lot of times the ideas will come to you, honestly, and you may not always have it the first time around, but you will have notes that you would take, and you can run with that, because the world is really, for those who, I mean, the future really, and it's, I guess it's also an abbreviated version of a quote that I don't remember who quoted, but the future is in the hands of those who sort of process, you think, and you're not waiting, you're not thinking about today, you're thinking about tomorrow, right? Because the solutions that the world needs, some of it we don't even know, right? Think of when the iPhone came. I didn't know. I mean, I like music. I have a Discman. Before then, it was a tape and all of that. But I also had a camera sitting somewhere, and I had a camcorder sitting somewhere. And all of a sudden, someone's like, we fuse all of this into one, and you can have it in one. So what solutions are you already processing and saying, how can we make it easier, simpler, faster, better? Because when you crack that, then, and you get into that problem solving mode, thinking ahead, I believe that the future is yours, whether you want to be a career person or an entrepreneur.
Exactly. Wow, very interesting, Ngozi. I thank you so much for your time today. I learned a lot. I'm not so young professional anymore, but I still learned a lot. And I thank you a lot, and wishing all the best to you, to your family, and to your team, of course.
Thank you so much, Paco. I wish you the same. Thank you for the opportunity. Super excited and humbled for this. Thank you.
Thank you,
I wish you
Ngozi.
all well. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye.